I'm Soraya Seedat. I'm a psychiatrist by training and I work at Stellenbosch University in the Department of Psychiatry. I think there are many aspects of involvement that have been both challenging but also hugely exciting and innovative, and I can perhaps touch on my role in GALENOS, which is leading work package 3, and I've had a long-standing interest and passion to build capacity among mental health professionals living on the African continent, but more widely in other low and middle income country contexts. And so I have over many years been involved in training early and mid-career researchers and upskilling them together with colleagues from these LMIC settings. I think it's hugely important in a project like GALENOS to ensure that it is a global and globally inclusive community of researchers and individuals with lived experience, because low and middle income country contexts are often excluded from projects such as this. We know that more than 80% of the world's population live in LMIC contexts, and that more than 80% of people with mental illness reside in LMIC contexts. And researchers from low and middle income country contexts are often sidelined, perhaps not intentionally, but are not included in large-scale projects that are as innovative and have the ability to, I think, change the landscape of how we think about research, how evidence is produced, how evidence is implemented in practice. We also know that there is, on average, a 17-year lag from evidence being generated to being implemented in practice and policy. And so I think this is one way to train researchers working more broadly in the field of global mental health to effect this change in a more timely manner. So we're trying to address the question of mechanisms. What are the mechanisms underpinning exercise and its purported benefits in post-traumatic stress disorder? So there have been a number of systematic reviews examining the benefits of exercise in reducing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as other associated features of post-traumatic stress disorder. Many of the impairments include depression, other anxiety problems, impairments in functioning and quality of life. But we have very little understanding of the underlying mechanisms. And if we understand those mechanisms better, well, they may inform potential treatments, either repurposing existing interventions or developing more innovative treatments. We know that individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder do not all respond to the current evidence-based armamentarium that we have in terms of medication treatments and other psychological interventions. And exercise may be a good addition to our existing evidence-based treatments. So as an add-on in patients who did not respond optimally to those treatments. And so that is hugely exciting, but it's also challenging because exercise is defined in many different ways. Exercise and physical activity may not be one and the same concept in the context of the evidence that has already been generated. And we have had to work very closely with methodologists who are experts in the field of evidence synthesis in parallel with our review, also defining what we mean by mechanisms. How do we assess causality? Because there is often a disconnect in how clinical researchers think about mechanisms that produce change in mental health problems versus how methodologists do so. We have defined exercise and exercise interventions in this review, and as a first step we have excluded interventions that in some quarters may be considered to be physical activity or physical exercise, such as yoga and other mindfulness-based interventions. And there are two primary reasons that we have excluded those interventions where there may be some disagreement in the research community, but also in the community at large. In addition to examining whether exercise alone may be effective for PTSD and what are the mechanisms underlying that, we're also interested in how exercise can be added on, as I mentioned, to evidence-based treatments. And so in order to first parse out the mechanisms, I think it is important that we have a very clearly defined concept of exercise and exercise interventions. So going forward, I think it will be important as we work together with the ontology group within GALENOS to perhaps think about how to better define exercise, because I think that of itself could be an important contribution to the clinical and research community and to the public at large. Well, I think firstly it's going to be of interest to people who work in the traumatic stress field, so to researchers and to clinicians. But I think more widely it could be of huge interest to other health professionals, because exercise is a low-cost intervention. It is possible that the type of exercise that is delivered or prescribed to individuals may be more moderate to high intensity exercise and quite structured in nature, and that will depend on the outcome of this review and what message we should communicate to our various stakeholders. But I think people with lived experience, I think it could provide hope. It could provide hope in terms of an intervention that, as I said, is a low-cost intervention that, in addition to having benefits for PTSD, could have wide physical health benefits, but also have benefits which we're not going to be examining as closely as we are with PTSD, but have benefits on other mental health problems that commonly co-occur with PTSD, such as depression. We know that exercise is an effective intervention for people with depression.